I'm 78 years old, and there's a quiet weight I carry every morning when I wake up alone. It isn't pain exactly. It's heavier than that. It's the knowledge that some things cannot be revisited, no matter how much time you spend thinking about them. I learned too late that love should never be postponed, and that lesson didn't arrive with drama or fireworks. It arrived slowly, in silence, after there was no one left to say it to. I'm not telling this because I need forgiveness. I don't expect understanding either. I'm telling it because at my age, the future is short and the past is very long. And the only thing left that still feels useful is honesty. If someone younger hears this and pauses for a moment in their own life, then maybe this won't feel like such a waste. These days, my world is small. The rooms haven't changed, but the people are gone. The chair across from me at the kitchen table has been empty for years now. I still set my cup down carefully, like someone else might bump it if I don't. Habits outlive the people they were built around. That's one of the crueler truths of aging. When you're young, you think love is something that waits patiently. You think it understands your timing. You tell yourself you'll get to it after the bills are paid, after the job settles down, after the kids grow, after things calm down. You believe love is flexible, that it will adjust itself around your plans. No one tells you that love doesn't run on schedules. It runs on presence. And when presence is delayed too long, love doesn't protest. It just quietly thins out, like air in a room with a slow leak. I didn't grow up in a home that talked much about feelings. We were decent people. We worked hard. We did what needed doing. Affection existed, but it wasn't spoken aloud. You were supposed to know, and if you needed to hear it, that was considered a weakness. I carried that lesson with me without realizing it. I thought silence was strength. I thought providing was the same as loving. I met her when I was 24. I can still picture the way she stood when she was listening, slightly leaning forward, like she didn't want to miss anything. She had a laugh that surprised people. It came out before she could stop it. I noticed that right away. I noticed a lot of things. I just didn't say most of them. We built a life the way people did back then. Steadily, sensibly, we worked, saved, worried, planned. There were good years. I don't want to pretend there weren't. But there was also a distance that slowly grew between us, not because we fought, but because we postponed the important conversations. We postponed tenderness. We postponed saying the things that felt awkward or unnecessary at the time. I told myself I would tell her how much she meant to me when things were less stressful. I told myself I would slow down when work eased up. I told myself there would be time later for trips, for long talks, for sitting together without distraction. Later became a habit. Later became a promise I never checked on. She would sometimes ask simple questions. Are you happy? Do you still feel close to me? I answered with reassurance instead of truth. I said things were fine. I said we were doing well. I thought keeping things calm was the same as keeping them healthy. I didn't understand that avoidance feels like rejection when you're on the other side of it. There were moments, small ones, where I could have changed course. Times when she reached for my hand, and I was distracted. Times when she wanted to talk, and I said, not tonight. Times when she needed comfort, and I offered solutions instead. None of those moments felt important on their own. That's how life gets you. Regret doesn't come from one terrible decision. It comes from 1,000 small delays that seem harmless. At the time, I loved her. I know that now with absolute certainty. But love that stays locked inside your chest isn't much comfort to the person standing in front of you. I thought love was something you felt. I didn't realize it was something you had to actively give, over and over, even when you were tired, even when you thought it was understood. When she got sick, Everything shifted at once. Suddenly, time mattered. Suddenly, the future wasn't abstract anymore. I was there physically. I did what needed to be done. I took care of appointments, medications, meals. I was efficient. I was responsible. I was still emotionally late. There were nights when she looked at me with a kind of tired patience that I didn't recognize until after she was gone. She wasn't angry. She wasn't accusing. She was waiting. And I was still postponing. Still. Telling myself I'd say the right things when things were calmer, when she felt better, when there was more time. There wasn't. The last conversation we had that really mattered was brief. She was weaker then. Her voice wasn't steady. She told me she hoped I knew she tried. That sentence still follows me around. She hoped I knew? I nodded. I said yes. I didn't say nearly enough in return. After she died, people said the usual things. That I'd been a good husband. That we had a long life together. That I should focus on the good memories. They meant well, but none of that touched the real ache. The real ache was knowing that the words I saved for later had expired. There is no place to deliver them once the person is gone. Grief changes shape as you age. At first it's sharp. Then it becomes duller, but heavier. It settles into routines. It shows up when you reach for another cup, when you hear a familiar, laugh in a crowd that isn't hers, when you realize no one will ever know certain versions of you again, because the person who saw them is gone. I replay conversations in my head sometimes, not to torture myself, but because my mind is still, trying to finish what I left unfinished. I imagine telling her the things I thought were obvious, that she made my life steadier, that I admired her strength, that her presence mattered more than all the things I was busy protecting. If you're wondering why I didn't just say those things when I had the chance, the answer isn't dramatic. It's simple and uncomfortable. I was afraid of being vulnerable. I was afraid of opening something I didn't know how to handle. I mistook emotional restraint for maturity. I thought being solid meant being silent. At 78, I can tell you that. Silence is rarely neutral. It's often interpreted as absence. And absence, even unintentional, erodes connection faster than anger ever could. Living alone now gives you a lot of time to notice patterns. I see how often I deferred joy. How often I chose productivity over presence. How often I treated love like a background condition instead of a living thing that needed attention. People talk about regret like it's dramatic, like it's full of tears and speeches. Most regret is quiet. It's waking up and knowing exactly where you went wrong without any ability to go back. It's understanding that your reasons made sense at the time and still led you somewhere you never wanted to be. I don't believe in rewriting the past. I don't sit around wishing I'd been a different man. I was who I was, shaped by what I knew and what I didn't. But I do believe in naming the truth while there's still breath to do it. The truth is this: love doesn't wait for your schedule. It doesn't pause while you get your life in order. It doesn't understand postponement as practicality. It understands it as distance. If you have someone in your life right now who feels slightly taken for granted, slightly postponed, slightly assumed, that space will not stay empty forever. It will either be filled with connection or with absence. And once absence settles in, it's very hard to remove. I'm not asking anyone to be perfect. I certainly wasn't. I'm not saying you need grand gestures or constant declarations. I'm saying that saying later too often is a gamble, and the house always wins. At my age, love is something I carry as memory more than experience. I tend it carefully. I don't romanticize it anymore. I see it clearly for what it was and what it needed. I see my role in what it became. Some nights, before I turn off the light, I speak out loud to an empty room. Not because I think she can hear me, but because I need to hear myself say the things I practiced for too long. It doesn't fix anything. It just reminds me that love withheld doesn't disappear. It waits inside you, heavy and unused if there's anything left for me to offer. It's this simple warning. Don't treat love like something you'll get around to. Don't assume the people who matter will always be there when you finally have time. Time is not loyal. It leaves without notice. I learned that too late. And that's the truth I have left to tell. I don't know when the days started blending together. At some point, mornings stopped feeling like beginnings and started feeling like repetitions. I wake up, I sit, I remember. That's the rhythm now. Memory becomes louder when life gets quieter. There's less noise to compete with it. After she was gone, I thought the hardest part would be the loneliness. I was wrong. Loneliness is painful. Yes, but it's straightforward. You know what it is. The harder part is recognition, realizing things about yourself when it's too late to act on them. Understanding your own patterns after the consequences are permanent. People assume old age brings clarity automatically. It doesn't. Clarity comes slowly and often cruelly. It comes when there's nothing left to protect, nothing left to lose, and no one left to misunderstand you. Only then do you start seeing your life without the excuses you needed while living it. I began noticing how often I had used responsibility as a shield, how I hid behind being dependable. I told myself I was doing everything for us, for the family, for the future, and in many ways that was true. But it was also incomplete. I didn't realize how often doing replaced being. I thought love lived in stability, in consistency, in not rocking the boat. What I didn't understand was that stability without emotional presence feels cold, predictable but lonely, safe but hollow. She never accused me. That's something that still unsettles me. If she had been angry, if she had shouted or demanded, I might have woken up sooner. But she was patient, and patience, I've learned, can be dangerous. It allows neglect to masquerade as peace. There's a moment, I think, about often. It was years before she got sick. We were sitting in the living room, a television on but muted. She turned to me and said very calmly, "Sometimes I feel like you're always somewhere else, even when you're here." I laughed it off. I told her she was overthinking. I said stress did that to people. I went back to the paper in my hands. That moment didn't feel like a turning point then. It feels like one now. That's how most regrets work. They don't announce themselves. They don't feel significant until you look backward and realize how many paths quietly closed because you didn't choose them when they were open. After the funeral, after the casseroles stopped arriving, after the phone calls slowed down, I was left with the life we had built and the absence within it. The house felt the same, but it sounded different. Silence has texture when you live in it long enough. It presses against you. I tried to keep busy at first, cleaned things that were already clean, organized drawers that hadn't been opened in years. People told me to find hobbies, join groups, stay active. They meant well. But activity doesn't fill emotional absence. It just distracts you from noticing it for a while. One afternoon, I found a stack of old cards she had written me over the years. Birthdays, anniversaries, short notes she left in lunch bags when we were younger. I realized something painful. Reading them, she had been saying the things out loud that I kept inside. She had been reaching across the gap I pretended wasn't there. I sat there for a long time with those cards in my lap, not crying, just breathing slowly, feeling the weight of missed reciprocity. Love doesn't need perfection, but it does need participation. It's strange how aging strips away your defenses. The things you were proud of, your discipline, your restraint, your self-control, start looking different when viewed through the lens of loss. Some of what I thought was strength was just fear in respectable clothing. I was afraid of needing too much. Afraid of being seen too clearly. Afraid that if I opened certain doors, I wouldn't know how to close them again. So I kept things measured, controlled, manageable. And in doing so, I starved the very connection I depended on. At 78, you start to understand that emotional safety doesn't come from avoidance. It comes from honesty, even when it's awkward, even when it feels unnecessary, even when it makes you uncomfortable. I see younger couples now, holding hands absent-mindedly, arguing quietly in grocery stores, scrolling their phones while sitting together, and I want to tell them something. Not advice, just a truth. That the ordinary moments are where connection either grows or fades. That neglect rarely looks dramatic. It looks like distraction. If I could sit across from my younger self, I wouldn't scold him. I wouldn't shame him. I'd just tell him that love needs witnesses. It needs to be spoken, touched, acknowledged. Otherwise, it starts to feel imaginary to the person waiting for it. I don't think she ever doubted that I cared. I think she doubted whether she mattered enough to be prioritized emotionally. That distinction matters more than people realize. As the years pass, you begin to inventory your life differently. You stop counting achievements. You start counting connections. Who really knew you? Who did you really know? Who did you make feel seen? Those questions get louder when there are fewer chances left to change the answers. I don't know how much time I have. None of us do, really. But at my age, the margin is thinner. My body reminds me daily. So does the quiet. So does the absence. Of someone who once filled the space effortlessly. This isn't a story about blame. It's about awareness arriving after opportunity. It's about understanding that love postponed doesn't wait patiently in storage. It weakens. It erodes. Sometimes it disappears without a sound. If you're listening to this and you think you have time, maybe you do. But time is not the same as willingness. Ask yourself what you keep putting off emotionally, what conversations you delay, what tenderness you assume can be delivered later. Later is not a place. It's an idea. And ideas don't hold people. I'm 78 now. I live carefully, quietly, honestly, for the first time in a long while. I say what I mean more often, even if there are fewer people to hear it. I've learned that clarity feels better than control, even when it arrives late. This is what I know, and what I wish I had known sooner. Love doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for presence. And presence delayed too long turns into regret and never really leaves. That's the truth I carry now. And if it can spare even one person from learning it this way, then saying it out loud is worth it.